Hello and welcome to a presentation all about the foundation degree in early childhood and the BA Honours in early childhood that we'll cover a little bit later on as a fourth year strand to the degree. So we are from the University of Warwick and we're based within the Centre for Lifelong Learning. And the whole premise really for the Centre for Lifelong Learning is to support students to progress through the degree, to flourish. In ways that perhaps they may not have originally had the opportunity to do. So you can sort of see the implications of that in our entry criteria, in our various layers of student support that Rachel Strazzino is going to talk to you about in a few minutes. So that's really what the Centre for Lifelong Learning is all about, supporting members of the community locally and broader to flourish within this degree particularly that we're talking about today. So the three of us here are members of the early childhood team, and there are a couple of other people that we'll tell you about as well that are also members of the team. So I'm Associate Professor Dr. Charlotte Jones and I'm Director of Early Childhood Programmes. We've also got Rachel Strazzino, Assistant Professor, who's here today. We've got Maggie Crowley, who's a Teaching Fellow, who's also here today. We have Karen Baxter, who we're really excited to have recently welcomed to the team as Teaching Fellow. And from the North Warwickshire and South Leicestershire College site, we've got Bina Palmer, who we will discuss in a bit in terms of the locations of your study. So Bina is the programme lead at North Warwickshire College. So what we'll do within this PowerPoint is we'll go through the different modules. So you've got a really good idea of what you're going to be studying. We'll talk to you about the way that we teach, the learning experience, the learning environment, the benefits of the degree, as well as some really important things to think about, such as finance and career progression. What next? And the university and the centre will support you in that. So I'm going to bring in now Rachel and Maggie, who are going to talk through the modules that you'll study in lots of lovely detail so you can get a really good sense of what they're about and how you'll be assessed. So let's start, shall we, both with year one, a really good overview of what's going to happen in year one.
So hello, my name's Maggie and I am the module lead for Foundations for Learning, CE1D7, and you are going to take this module at the very start of your first year. And it is exactly what it says on the tin. It gives you the foundations for learning at higher education. It includes study skills that include reflection, critical reading, reading for pleasure, and then reading for a purpose. It takes place through a scheme of work that includes seminars each week, where you are put into collaborative groups to digest and interrogate a journal article of choice, and then at the end of that first part you take an assessment that is a presentation. You do the presentation again in allocated groups, so we are very much for the community of practice, the community of sharing within Foundations for Learning, because we recognise that you all come from the same sector but from slightly different roles, and it's very good to listen to each other's points of view and digest other points of view so that you have a critical lens on the sector that you work in. The second part of Foundations for Learning is wrapped up in a portfolio that concentrates on the power of storytelling within the early years. So there's three aspects to that portfolio, but it's wonderful. We get wonderful feedback about that element of our Foundations for Learning. And in fact, at the end of student feedback and at the end of BA Honours, when students return and they give us their overall feedback, they still remember that very first module where they changed how they viewed storytelling and the power of storytelling within their sector and the dissemination of it then with their team as well. So over to Rachel.
Thank you, Maggie. So I'm Rachel Strazzino, and following Maggie's module in term one, I then work with you in term two of year one, where I introduce you to psychological, sociological and health aspects of how children learn and develop from birth. So in our module, you have the opportunity to observe children and to make connections between your observation, theory and practice. But we also look at the role of the family in the wider environment in terms of how children learn and develop from birth. So we look at aspects of health, we look at aspects of the role of the family and of yourselves as early years practitioners. And as Maggie said, you all are interested in this as a discipline, but you might be coming from very different starting places. So we have a weekly lecture PowerPoint that accompanies the module, along with additional reading, and we support you to collaborate as you're working through the module. Contemporary perspectives in early childhood is then followed in term 3, where this is a really lovely module in that it can be quite fluid year on year, depending on the nature of contemporary perspectives that are current within the discipline of early childhood. So it could be talking about the relevance of IT and technology with very young children. It could be talking about refugee children, health of children, the impact of poverty. There's a very endless list, but in this module you're given a lot of freedom to actually think about matters that are of real importance to you as early childhood professionals. So all of those modules in year 1 are at level 4 when you start with us. And then we proceed into year 2 and we start year 2 with another level 4 module, which I currently lead, which is policy into practice in early childhood. And in this module, we try to empower you to question why you do things in practice in a particular way, to question the legitimacy of some aspects of work in practice, but also to make links to wider government legislation and documents, and also to go even broader than that and look at international impact of policy into practice. So this again is a really interesting module where you reflect on the power that policy has in your daily life. And just now going to move on to Maggie, but you now, after you've finished policy into practice, you transfer up to level 5. So I'll pass back to Maggie now.
So thank you, Rachel. Yes, so in term 2 of your second year, you take safety and risk in early childhood. It's a module that looks at initially safeguarding issues, and you carry out a case study based on a child and a family that have got a number of adverse childhood experiences happening at the same time. So we look at the legislation, the policy, and the process of following safeguarding interventions within the workplace. And then the second part looks at a slightly different area of safety and risk that we don't always look at on other early year childhood programmes. We look at the term risky play, and we pull that apart and we look at the biological, the genetic influences and the sociological influences on the reasons why children should engage in risky play. And that ends in an essay. So there's a case study and an essay within safety and risk. And then in term 3, you start your research journey with us in a very gentle introductory module called Researching Early Childhood. The first aspect of it is looking at journal articles and research articles related to the early childhood sector. So we concentrate on 2 articles in particular, and we pull them apart. We look at the literature review, we look at the methodology, we look at how it's been authored, why it's been authored in the way it has, we look at the referencing, we look at the discussion and compare and contrast, and that's what we call a critical review. And then the second part of research in early childhood is the bedrock of your further modules in research. We look at the voice of the child in early years or early childhood studies. Where is the voice of the child? Where is the voice of the child historically, and where are we from a contemporary point of view? How do we include them, and how do we ensure that our early years research is ethical? So thank you. Over to Charlotte to change the slide.
Before I do, I was going to actually give us an opportunity to pause just to sort of raise a couple of things that might be really useful for people listening in. The first one is the structure of the degree. And as you can see from what's just been described, we're termly, and each year we have 3 terms, and that follows through all the way through the degree. And I guess the main thing for me to say is that you do 1 module per term. And often when I've spoken to applicants before, that's actually very appealing, because rather than throwing everything at you all at once, we recognise that you're juggling potentially family, work, other studies, whatever it is that your circumstances look like. And in order to support you, we believe that 1 module at a time is much more accessible, as I say, than throwing several modules at once. So term 1, module 1, term 2, module 2, term 3, module 3, and then you're on to the next year. And that's the same pattern all the way through. But the other thing I wanted to say is, I think this slide and the modules on here provide a really useful example of the level of support that you receive. So that's clear in Foundations for Learning. Maggie was talking about study skills and really starting off your journey as an academic, because that's what you're here for, as well as the early childhood discipline. You're here to develop yourself academically. But that Contemporary Perspectives module in term 3 of year 1 is where we really start to build your critical analysis skill. And the reason that we do that in year 1 so early on is that is a core skill for you to have throughout the whole degree. So rather than you sort of stumbling upon it at some point, maybe in year 2 and year 3, and thinking, gosh, this is a skill I really need to start developing, we do that from year 1 because we recognise that that's key. So we start with that, obviously throughout term 1 and term 2 modules as well, but particularly in that Contemporary Perspectives one, so that by the time you go into year 2, you've got that really good grounding in those core skills. And Maggie also referred to researching early childhood, which is the first step in the research journey, if you like, with us. And you'll see in a bit that we have another research module. And then you have your project. So it's a bit by bit, it's a block by block approach in how we support you. So you're never sort of flung into a topic or an area that you're going to be assessed on without that really good grounding. So I just wanted to sort of give you an overview of the structure there. So Maggie and Rachel are going to continue with the next slide, where we're going to talk about year 3. So we've done first year, second year. We're now moving on to third year. So these are continuing as level 5 modules. Okay. Rachel first.
Thank you. So when you join us at the beginning of year 3 in term 1, which just to follow on from Charlotte's discussion, term 1 would be October to December. You choose a module, well, you're encouraged to do this module, Inclusion and Special Educational Needs and Disability in Early Childhood. And this module can be quite challenging because it really asks you to question your own philosophical stance in terms of the concept of inclusion, how you as a practitioner work in an inclusive way, and how you actually challenge and argue about oppression and anti-discriminatory practice. So we talk about how you can develop your understanding and others within the wider community to be aware of exclusion and how we can challenge that. The second half of the module then focuses on our primary and early years education system and asks you to reflect on special educational needs and disability in early childhood, to actually look at what is the best form of practice with working with educational needs. So we again start off with a historical background in this module. We bring it right down to the modern day and actually critically think about how things have changed. We also still carry on a common thread throughout our degree where we explore policy and codes of practice and how they have an impact on your daily work. So I'll pass to Maggie now for leadership in early childhood.
Sorry, I was on mute. That was going to happen, wasn't it? This is your first optional route to take that can lead to a pathway. And the first module that I'm going to talk about is leadership in early childhood, which I'm the module lead for. It builds on that thread again from CE 275, where you carry out a mini action research presentation stroke project for part 1, based on a leadership and management issue that you've identified within your own workplace, or if you're not working with children at the time, hypothetically trying to improve or implement something that will make a change, make an impact for the child, for the family, or for the community. And then your second part in leadership in early childhood, you reflect on your role as a leader or a manager within a setting. Now, not all of our students that take this module have that role, but you can still take the module as an optional if you're interested in the aspect of teams, how teams are formed, the aspects of how managers manage and how leaders are visionaries. And we also look at, more importantly, your core reflective history, your lens. Where are you now and why are you where you are? And we look at interpersonal and intrapersonal psychologies behind why we behave a certain way within a team or not in a team. So I'll pass over to Rachel and I will mute myself.
Thank you, Maggie. So our second option module in year 3 is teaching, learning and assessment in early years, in early childhood. So again, with this module, it's a really lovely one in terms of it's very reflective in its nature. It asks you to consider your own teaching style because we class you as teachers. It asks you to think about how children learn. And it asks you to think about the nature of assessment. So that could be with regards to observations, it could be official assessment such as the EYFS profile, it could be assessment with regards to early intervention. So there is a thread of psychology that runs through this module in terms of understanding our approach to teaching, but also children's approach to learning. So it is very reflective. So just to put year 3 into context, when you enroll for year 3, you all take the inclusion and SEN module, but you also choose one of the option modules. You don't do 3. So in year 3, you're actually finishing your foundation degree at the end of term 2. So for some of you, you may choose to do inclusion in term 1 and leadership in early childhood in term 2, and that would be the entirety of your foundation degree. So I'll pass to Charlotte now.
So the majority of our students decide to stay on and do their BA year. And it's important when I say year, we're not talking about 12 months, we're talking more like 9, aren't we? So you'll see that this is 4 years, but if you remember, sort of each year is around 9 months as an academic year. So for those students that decide to do the BA year, they start in term 3 with early childhood in global contexts. And Rachel, you're currently module leader about that. Do you want to give a flavour of that module for us?
Indeed. So like with the other 2 years, when you get to the summer term of year 3, you transition to your first level 6 module, which is currently with myself. It's early childhood in a global context. And what we ask you to do there is to really look up at the world around you and to understand, firstly, the concept of what we call comparative education studies. So in the UK, what can we learn as educationalists by drawing on expertise and pedagogy in other areas of the world? So we ask you to think about those types of educational approaches. Then the second half of the module asks you to examine the opportunities of children in a global context by exploring different countries and their approach to politics, economics, sustainable development, environment. So we really pick away at what it is like for a child in another part of the world and what that could have in terms of their opportunities for a healthy start to their life. So it's a really exciting module. I think this is probably a really strong module in that you can't necessarily default back to what you think you know about your own practice, because it is a completely new angle for many of you. But the feedback from this module is that without that broader understanding of early childhood in a global context, you can't really support children and have that wider knowledge about where they sit within the world. We don't sit in isolation, and eventually all of our children will interact with other children in a global context, whether that be through children in their practice, such as children who are refugees and asylum seekers or economic migrants, or in the workplace. As they grow and become older, they will have opportunities to understand different cultural aspects of working together. So this module is a really good footing for that. So I'll pass to Charlotte now.
Rachel, am I right in thinking that as part of that module, hot off the press, is that we're starting to look at developing international opportunities for students, whether it's sort of like a pen friend or certainly buddy up with an early childhood educator, practitioner elsewhere in the world, and potentially looking at really starting to develop a sort of global awareness of practitioner experiences as well as children's.
Indeed, that is the aim. I'm busily trying to forge connections with colleagues in different parts of the world, and try and get it that we could at least have some sort of electronic buddy system where students from other parts of the world who are also engaged in education and early childhood context can marry up with our students and share ideas and personal experiences and case studies. So yes, that is something that we're aiming to do.
Lovely. So that brings us then to the last two modules of this BA part of the degree. And a few slides ago, I was saying about the highly supportive nature of the degree and the structure of the modules. And here is the classic example. So we're developing those critical analysis skills, which include things like researching, literature reviews, etc. in year one. You remember that contemporary perspectives module I was talking about in term 3 of year 1. You might then remember that in year 2, term 3, you'll have to go back at the slides and have a look. We've got researching early childhood, and the code for that, by the way, is CE 275. So if you heard Maggie say 275 earlier, that's what that is. It's that research module. We know them off the top of our head, don't we? They're ingrained in our minds. And that researching early childhood module that Maggie was referring to is absolutely the first step of exploring research, our responsibilities as ethical researchers, and promoting the child's voice in research, not being afraid to research with children rather than simply on them. 4th year, research methodologies in early childhood, which you can see on this slide, is a module dedicated to supporting you to then do your dissertation. So we spend a whole module preparing you for your research project, let alone the one that you did in year 2, 275, a whole module preparing you for the dissertation. So again, it's an example of where we're guiding you, supporting you block by block to get to where you want to be and to be successful. So within research methodologies, we explore your areas of interest, because an excellent feature of the BA is that you can really drill down to a topic that you are completely passionate about, and it will probably be something that you've explored throughout the degree, or maybe something that's inspired you from practice, and we'll build your research project within that research methodologies module, but very much in a kind of trial and error way, because we want you to be able to experiment with your ideas, to make mistakes, because in research it's messy. It's a messy business doing research. We have ideas and then we rewrite them, we test things out and they don't work, we try again. So that module is very much about that. It's also about building upon the ethical principles that you've covered in year 2, again to ensure that you're an ethical practitioner and also an ethical researcher. That module involves you creating a proposal for your research idea, which we work on each week in class. So that is a weekly attendance module, that one. and you're literally bringing in your proposal, and we fill in an ethics form and we bring that in each week. We work on that together. You get feedback as you go along from me, the module leader who's leading that currently. Then in term 2 and term 3, we are starting on the dissertation. So you've had all that pre-work in research methodologies, and then early childhood investigations is term 2 and term 3. And that's a really lovely and supportive way of finishing the degree, because what your experience entails for that term 2 and term 3 is you being allocated a dissertation supervisor, and that will be somebody on the early childhood team. So it won't be somebody from across the university that doesn't know you and hasn't taught you. It will be somebody who has taught you, who is part of the early childhood team, who's followed your journey and has been a cheerleader for you all the way through, probably. And you will meet with them one-to-one fairly regularly to support you in your developing ideas. And you are literally in that module conducting research. So you've designed it in research methodologies, and then term 2 and term 3, you're actually getting it underway. You might enhance it with your dissertation supervisor, certainly you will, and they'll support you in the ethical approval process that you have to go through as part of that. But you are in the hot seat there as the researcher, gathering data on a topic of your interest. And then we have a wonderful close to the degree, a real celebration of that research, where we like to put on an early childhood conference, and we're always thinking of ways of developing that. And I know we've got a few ideas of how we might like to perhaps involve employers, thinking also about how we might support students to publish their research, which is something I'm really keen on. I think for us, assessment on the degree doesn't end at the point of assessment. We're always thinking of ways of celebrating that and supporting you to publish that and to share that with settings and employers. So that then brings us to the end of that BA year. So what have we got next? Maggie, I think you were going to talk a little bit about the named awards.
Yes, so what's quite unique at Warwick on our foundation degree and BA pathway, different to other universities that offer a similar degree, is that you can leave with a named award, a pathway, either inclusion and special educational needs and disability, or leadership, or teaching, learning and assessment. To approve those named awards, you've got to have taken the named pathway. So, for example, you may have taken the leadership module with myself and you've got a good grade. You've got to get a good grade average, and then you've got to then follow that action research trajectory right through to your dissertation project. So, for example, you might choose to do a piece of research about Belbin's model within your workplace at the named pathway, and you'd carry it out in leadership and management with myself. You get a good grade, and then you carry it through to, at the moment, Charlotte's module, and your dissertation project, your proposal, is also linked to Belbin's and the action research that needs to be carried out. It's totally up to you to choose that named award, and you do get reminded at year 1, year 2 and year 3 on how to apply for that named pathway, to make sure that at the end of your early childhood degree you can get a grade associated with that named pathway. Your personal tutor will help you along that line. They will give you advice, and of course the module leads as well. But having said that, apart from the named award, you can have just the generic early childhood studies degree, which has got just as much authority and credit value. So it doesn't matter if you don't take a named award, but the option, quite uniquely, is there for you. Thank you, Charlotte.
Maggie, you just mentioned something really important there about personal tutors, and I suspect people watching this are thinking, what is a personal tutor? How do I get one? What do they do? So I will just spend a second just talking about that very, very briefly. Rachel, in a few slides' time, will talk about academic and pastoral support. And one of the many layers that Rachel will talk about is the personal tutor. And very simply, the personal tutor is somebody that is allocated to you. Again, it will be somebody who teaches you, who is a course director, module leader, whoever it might be. And their whole remit in their engagement with you is to support you throughout your experience. So Rachel will cover that in a lot more detail, but that was a really, really good point at which to mention about personal tutors, Maggie. A really significant feature in terms of your progress on this degree and how we support you in that. Special features apart from personal tutors. We have very, very strong links with practice, and I think one thing that we all celebrate as a team is that our students are drawn from diverse early childhood contexts, which means that I always say this to applicants when I speak to them, you'll be sat amongst people from different working contexts, different experiences, and can you imagine the richness then of the conversations that we have in class? And as tutors, we often come away with all sorts of ideas and areas of inspiration from teaching our students. Just as much as you're inspired, we are too. So on the early childhood degree, it's one evening a week, and that will either be on a Monday evening or a Wednesday evening, depending upon which year you join us. And you'll be told that way ahead so that you know the day that you're going to be expected to come in. And it's slightly different for North Warwickshire. Rachel, maybe you could talk about that in a bit. But for the University of Warwick, so it's offered at 2 sites. At the University of Warwick, it's one evening a week, and it's 6 till 9 o'clock in the evening. It's quite funny, isn't it? You'd think that coming in until 9 o'clock, everyone's exhausted. But actually, I don't know about you two, but I go away wide awake because we've discussed some brilliant stuff and my head's buzzing. So one evening a week, 6 till 9. And there are also a couple of Saturdays per term. And again, you're told the dates of those way in advance. Saturdays are lovely. Every year group on the degree joins together within the learning space. You obviously go off and have sessions for your particular modules, for your particular year group, but really lovely to join together on Saturdays. So the foundation degree is 3 years. Remember what I said about the length of a year, and the BA element is an extra year on top. You'll see here we are today. We've said our job roles. We are also more than happy when we interview you and have a chat with you to talk you through our experience, our expertise, our areas of practice. But rest assured that you are supported by an experienced team. And that's from the context of early childhood research. That's from the context of early childhood practice. A very skilled, highly skilled team, which is excellent. And a lovely feature of the degree is, as Maggie was referring to, those specialist pathways. So, Rachel, I believe you're going to tell us about one of the best features of the degree. We all heave a sigh of relief that there are no exams.
Indeed. We appreciate on our degree at the University of Warwick that exams really only capture a snapshot of your knowledge at a given time, and that exams are not for everybody. So we do strive to have a variety of assessment strategies within the degree, but embedded throughout. So we have formative assessment, which may be that we ask you to send us a draft of your assignment for us to proofread and to send back to you with guidance. Or it could be, as Maggie's previously mentioned, that you're asked to read a particular article and then offer supportive comments on a virtual forum, such as our platform Moodle, which I'll mention to you in a moment. So with regards to assessment, you can rest assured there are no exams. So our assessments are based on combinations of portfolios, with case studies, essays, presentations, and verbal discussions. So again, it hopefully will support all of you to be included and to achieve. There is excellent support with academic studies. within CLL, you are assigned, as Charlotte mentioned, a personal tutor, and that personal tutor meets with you at least in term 1, but we generally meet with you throughout the academic year, and we're there to support you not only with developing your academic study skills and signposting you to other colleagues within CLL that offer welfare and well-being and academic support, but we also support you with pastoral elements. So we can be a bit of a listening ear to then signpost you to the layers and breadth of support that is offered within the wider university community. So that might be that you go to we have a student staff liaison committee where you can take part and you can be the voice of your student group, and we can action things as an academic team to support you on your way. Or it may be that we look at you with regards to the personal tutor role, and we support you on a one-to-one basis. As I said, within CLL, we have our wellbeing studies team who offer workshops for you to attend to develop aspects of your academic writing, but also to support you with well-being. And then we've got a much broader wellbeing department that's part of our central main campus, and the list of support that they can offer you is very lengthy. But as a University of Warwick student, you're entitled to all sorts of support, including counselling, access to workshops around time management, workshops around stress management, preparing for writing academic essays. The list is extensive. As we've alluded to through the discussion, we offer the degree at 2 centres, primarily the University of Warwick, where we deliver it in an evening. As Charlotte mentioned, it's either a Wednesday or a Monday. And we aim to try to keep that consistent throughout the whole process of your degree, so as you can arrange your family and work commitments around that. And then we've got our partnership college, North Warwickshire and South Leicestershire, who presently delivered the course midweek between Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. And they tend to deliver it in an afternoon sort of twilight session. So again, that's worth thinking about if that would work better for you in terms of your work and family commitments. There are also opportunities to progress to higher degrees. Details of this can be found on our CLL Early Childhood website. So it may be that you want to proceed to go into teacher training, and we have recently secured the opportunity, if you meet the right eligibility criteria, that you can be guaranteed an interview with our teacher training department in the University of Warwick. There are also varied career opportunities with regards to feedback that we've had from students who have graduated. So we've got students who may wish to go on to teacher training and teach in primary schools, but we also have students who then go on and teach in FE and also join us in teaching in higher education eventually. But we've also got students who have worked their way through family support networks, working for local authority, charities. Recently, a student has enrolled onto a nursing degree to work in specialist education and disability needs. We've got students who have gone on to work with families in support of drug and alcohol abuse and substance abuse. So even though you may be in a nursery at the moment and that's where you want your career to proceed and develop, we know that the early years degree has many transferable skills that could take you into a really wide range of careers. And we do have a very good careers department that can not only help you select suitable opportunities, but help you to prepare for interview and developing your CV. But again, on our webpage and our Moodle page, which is our virtual learning environment, you will be able to find a lot more details. And just to develop a little bit of an understanding about how we teach at Warwick, we do aim for most of our lectures to be face-to-face, but we're also very aware that a blended approach where we may do some of our learning online and join you virtually is also extremely popular and helps you to achieve. And a lot of our materials that you will be using throughout the course of your studies are stored on a virtual learning environment platform called Moodle. And that basically is your guidebook to every module that you cover, the assessment that you will be covering, and the wider dialogue and community that emerges as a student whilst you're with us at Warwick. We also do a termly newsletter, which is excellent because it really showcases what students are working on in terms of their own professional development. But we as a team also share with you all of the exciting opportunities that we are working in. And often some of our opportunities mean that we work with students as well. So we foster that collaborative community all the way through our degree. So I think we need to move to the next slide now, Charlotte.
I will just say the observant among the audience may have noticed we nearly, I think, saw who I would regard as a course mascot. Maggie's face, Rachel, it was so funny. So I don't know if anybody spotted that, but there was a moment we may have seen one of the course mascots, which is hilarious. You know, throughout the pandemic, we have had to extend our community, I think, to include pets and children, as I'm sure those of you watching will have done as well in terms of juggling work. So we're open to that, aren't we? So you say about sort of blended experiences, and I think, you know, we've really enjoyed that, absolutely, and our pets have too. So Maggie will now be talking about some slightly alternative parts of the degree that are not sort of part of the early childhood community directly, but part of that sort of broader student experience. So Maggie, over to you and the mascot.
From Maggie and Alan. Yes, well spotted, Charlotte. I did try to get him down a little bit, but he pushed his way through. Yeah, so the beauty of choosing this degree is that you are part of the community within CLL, Centre for Lifelong Learning, at Westwood campus, which is a beautiful campus. It's very leafy, very suburby, but then as part of your degree, you are part of the wider Warwick community. And I cannot endorse visiting the wider community, the main campus, enough, because you will become part of the society. There are lots of things that are going on, live events. You will get reduced tickets and reduced allocation, families perhaps, for the arts and the theatres and the works that they put on there. It's a beautiful campus. We were only talking about it earlier this morning about the vibrancy of it. And if you are local to the actual campus, it's wonderful to visit on a Saturday or a Sunday with your family. So you're not just part of the CLL family, you're part of the wider Warwick University. But apart from the pleasure part of being part of Warwick, as I've just explained, you've got the wider academic skills and support sessions to log into if you wish. So we support you at CLL, as Rachel outlined earlier, but you've got also the wider Warwick library and support services there. We can't endorse enough becoming a member of the student union, because you not only get reductions in shops, etc. for that, but you get access to certain activities at Warwick, again at a much reduced rate, for not just you, but your family as well. And then, of course, you graduate with Warwick. So, dare I say, the top 10 universities in the UK, this is where Charlotte might want to endorse it a little bit better, but you walk away with a Warwick University degree, which is of high calibre, not just in the UK, but internationally as well. Thank you, Charlotte.
You're absolutely right, Maggie, and I think there's so much pride from us as a teaching team to work at the university and be part of the academic community, and we're also very proud, obviously, to be part of the early childhood community. So I believe we are on to me. So this slide is essentially the sort of logistics slide. So you know that it's going to be, if you're at Warwick, one evening a week. If you're looking for North Warwickshire, then it's more that sort of afternoon twilight time. And again, if you're looking at North Warwickshire, you'll be given an indication of dates and days, etc., to support you to make decisions. But it's really worth looking at your diary, talking to your employer. Obviously, if you're attending evening sessions and you're working in the daytime, then that's really flexible. And a lot of our students come straight from work. I have known students bring their dinner. So they come straight from work, straight into this buzzing early childhood community that we all love. So check diary, see if the days that we've suggested that you'd be coming in for your learning fit. Discuss your plans with family and, as I say, employers. Finance. So a lot of our students utilise student funding, so through Student Finance England, and absolutely fine. That is absolutely possible, and I'd encourage you to look at Student Finance England web pages to explore the process. I think we'd always say, wouldn't we, team, that applicants really need to pursue the Finance England element as soon as possible, just so that there's plenty of time for that to all be sorted, so that you're starting your studies with everything financially in place. So there's a link there as well on this slide to the finance department within the university. So the university has lots of different support departments: wellbeing and welfare, study skills, careers, finance, all of the sort of key players, if you like, in your experience. It might be that you want to enrol on short, free workshops and courses in between now and starting the degree, which you're more than welcome to do. And if you want to know about opportunities that we as a team might be putting on over the next few months for you to tap into, then let us know. Finally, Rachel, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Charlotte. I'd just like to put a big thank you out to any of you candidates that have been listening to our discussion, and to just draw your attention to the list of names and emails that are on this slide. We appreciate that we will chat with you at interview. But please, in the meantime, if anybody's got any queries or questions, please feel free to email one of us, and we will do our best to answer your question as honestly as we can, or signpost you to a department that can help us. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, and thank you so much to Maggie and Rachel as well. It's a lovely opportunity to chat together and really celebrate a course that we know and love. So thank you both as well. Excellent. We hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.